Lingua Brutalica is a podcast that uses ethnographic interviews to study language use in the extreme metal community. We are studying a music scene known for its love of themes and topics generally considered offensive, and it is likely that some episodes will touch on topics or opinions some listeners may find tasteless or ethically problematic. Ethnographic researchers aim to adopt the interviewee's point of view so that we can draw out and study the attitudes, beliefs, and practices that are important to them. We want to make it clear that in presenting these conversations here, we do not endorse any of their content. Our aim is to explore the thought processes behind language use in this long-running, international, and yet understudied scene. Hey everyone, welcome back to Lingua Brutalica with me, Jess Boney-Smith, and my co-host, Wes Robertson.
Hello.
Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Frank Albanese, guitarist and vocalist of Hath, who are located in New Jersey in the US. How are you doing today, Frank?
I'm doing great. How about yourselves?
Really good.
Pretty good, yeah. Thanks for making time to chat to us.
Yeah, no problem at all. I don't have anything else to do.
Good a reason as any.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So would you mind describing Hath's music for, you're a given metal fan who's never heard of you guys before?
Oh man, if I had to make it quick and simple for a newcomer, we really like opeth and blast beats and riffs that are arcane and evil sounding, but we try to do some catchy stuff in there too.
Okay, that's a good description. Yeah. We haven't heard that one before.
Encyclopedia Metallum describes you as progressive blackened death metal. Do you vibe with that, or?
I'll accept it because I always think that we're like too close to the product to properly judge it. Like we know how it was made, so I don't know if the labels are accurate. So I'm like, I trust what everyone else says.
All right, fair enough. So how did you first get into like metal in general, and then more specifically the type of metal that you make now?
I actually just kind of grew up around it. Like my mom was huge into Sabbath and like that kind of stuff, and my uncle was huge into Anthrax and Slayer, and so I just kind of grew up around it. And I had friends they had friends who were into stuff. And I want to say maybe like when I was like 11 or 12, I was getting into Slipknot and System of a Down when they were new. And I was like, this is the best stuff ever. And then I went to Ozfest and I heard all these other bands and I was like, oh shit. Okay. And I think the first like heavier band I got into after that was either Cannibal Corpse or Sepultura and Vader. Like those three was like where I learned what blast beats actually were.
So was that kind of evil arcane quality that you described in relation to house music something that attracted you to the genre initially when you first started listening?
Yeah, I think so. Like I'm drawn to things that are more like theatrical or horror based too. So like I just like all the stuff that kind of surrounds it in that realm. So I don't know. I've just always been drawn to those things my whole life. So it was easy. I was like, oh, I love this stuff.
When you first started listening to that, did you pay any attention to the lyrics, or was it mainly just the blast beats and the music?
It really depends. Like if it was like my favorite bands, I would actually care. But 9 times out of 10, I would just be like, man, these instrument parts are really cool. like that was the stuff I focused on mostly. And it was only in the last 5 or 10 years that I started caring more and more about what the lyrics actually like were and like what they meant and stuff. It was not something I cared about at first. It was just like, I want to know the words so I can sing along, but that's it.
What triggered that change?
When I was writing songs and I actually had to come up with stuff, I was like, I should probably like look into this more than blood and gore and guts and blah, blah, blah.
Did looking into the lyrics kind of change or solidify your sense of like what makes quintessentially metal music in any way?
I don't think so, because when I started to actually like look in all the stuff, I saw how varied it all was
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So I was like, there's no real like one approach to it, but it did kind of show me the things that I did not want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because I don't like them, but it was just like, I don't need to do what this band does. I don't want to do what this other band does. Like, this doesn't speak to me. I like when they do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually finding that not all bands were about, you know, violence and gore and evil satanic stuff. I was like, I like that, but I was like, it's cool that there's bands that aren't that, because everyone thinks that that's all there is. So it was nice to see the variation across the genre, especially as time goes on, when there's more and more bands. It's cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So what kind of made you decide that, you know, this is stuff that I want to do in my own music and this is stuff that I don't want to do in my own music? Was there, like you mentioned, kind of the stuff being too evil, which you enjoy but didn't want to do? Was there other stuff that you found as you looked into it that you just decided, you know, not really my style, and why?
Honestly, mostly trial and error. Like after playing in bands since like high school, with, I don't know, tens of people, you go through a lot of songs, and eventually you're like, these are songs that I enjoy going and performing in front of people, and these are ones that I don't. And it makes you think about why. You're like, these are words that I feel strongly about, or these are ones that I don't. It was mostly just through trial and error. I saw what felt good to perform and scream at strangers.
Well, was there like anything that like you found, like, you know, as you mentioned, that really turned you off, or you find like kind of ruins a song?
I think there's things that are obviously like tasteless that have been talked about over and over, but like mostly it's just stuff. If I feel like I've heard it done 100 times and it's been done well, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't need to do a song about zombies tearing people apart. It's not because I don't like it. It's because I've heard it and I like what I've heard. So I'm like, it's good. It's there already. I don't need to put it back into the world. It's already there.
So there's a desire. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just mostly that kind of stuff. Like, I don't need to copy what's been done. It's there.
So for you as a writer, are you trying to do things that you haven't seen before?
Not really a conscious effort, but that's what I like to see in the finished product. So like, usually we write more than we put out. And usually what happens is I'll write a lot of things and then I'll just choose from that and say, all right, this is the bit that speaks best to this song. But I prefer fresh new ideas. But I mean, things change over time. By album 3, I might change my mind completely.
I mean, we can definitely relate as academics. You know, in order to write papers, we have to like find a niche or a gap in the existing literature, so that we know that we're adding something new rather than just, you know, repeating already extant ideas. So
I'm
very
sure,
relatable.
Yeah.
Is there is it tricky though to kind of find the difference between like allowing yourself to be influenced without repeating things? Because obviously, you know, producing metal, there's this history that we all, you know, have listened to and grown up with, and as you mentioned, enjoy. Is there a line between like doing the same thing and like just being influenced? Is it hard to navigate that space, or have you found it pretty easy?
Honestly, it's not something that it's not something we consciously think about. Like, we'll write stuff and we'll create stuff, and then after the fact be like, oh, you know what, this kind of sounds like XYZ, and we'll decide then if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, if this sounds too much like this thing, then we're like, all right, that's maybe that can't stay.
So there is a reflexive process though. Like after something's done, you go back and look at it and see if you like kind of like what you've come up with.
Yeah, it's almost always reflexive. Like it's not like we sit down and say, today I'm gonna write a fast thrashy song about politics. Like that, it's just not how we approach. It's more just stream of consciousness stuff. Like we just free write and then pick and choose.
Okay, right. So like when you free write, is it like I suppose writing for like specific songs that have already been written, at least like, you know, the music of those songs has already been written, then you create lyrics to fit that, or yeah, how does it work?
Kind of independently. So like,
oh, okay, interesting.
So just as an example for the album that we just put out, AJ, our drummer, wrote the music for, let's say, 2/3 of the whole thing. And then, so he wrote those tracks on his own. And then like, I would write pieces of, I would write pieces of lyrics here and there for like 2 years. And then I would slowly like group them with similar subjects until I had something that felt coherent. And then I would go through that and comb through it and flesh it out to be right for that one song. Rather than try and sit and say, I need to write 24 lines for the third track tonight. It was just pieces here and there that I would then make sense of after the fact.
Okay.
But that's just what worked this time. Like on the previous album, half of half of our words were written while we were recording them. Like,
oh, like in the studio?
Yeah. Like it was not a professional way to do it. But like sometimes you just do things in a new way. I don't know.
So yeah, based on that, like do you come up with like a kind of like theme in anticipation of writing the lyrics, or is it like, you know, in that free writing style, do you just kind of let the theme or the story kind of build itself as you're going?
That's kind of changed over time.
Okay.
When we did our first EP Hive, I was trying to do a theme. So that those 5 songs, it's basically like some kind of evil sorcerer living on as a spirit of sorts, and he basically searches for a new person to possess, and then he like takes over, and then they do all their horrible things, and they turn into this horrible creature of destruction. And then it turns out that the evil force that they were serving through all of this is uncaring to them as well, and they're like, oh, I'm just like all the people who I killed, blah blah blah. So like I tried to do that theme that time, but then like for this album, all the songs were like more personal, and it was all like stuff that I was trying to work through, but I wanted the lyrics to not be too shallow or like at face value. Like they would be cool for the song, but if you also looked into it deeper, there was something else.
Right.
So the approach changed.
So we're that's very interesting that you mentioned the songs kind of being personal. Because when we were preparing this interview, we found some other interviews with you, and it said that your lyrics often are built around the narrative of the Dark Souls fantasy. Going back to the Encyclopedia Metallum, they actually describe your lyrical themes as dark fantasy / Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, well, first, is that description did we get bad information there? But also, if we didn't, are you weaving in like your own personal stories into this Dark Souls lore?
I'm actually glad you're asking this.
Okay.
Because on our first full-length album,
Mhm.
there's 5 songs that pull themes from those games, and like those 5 songs out of our, I think, like 24,
Mhm.
it's just those 5. But for some reason everyone thinks every song is like Dark Souls, and I'm like, no, it's just those 5. But I feel like there's a lot of stuff in those games where the themes speak to those in power trying to exploit people and the world itself to keep their status. And I just think that's ripe for lyrical content. But that was those 5 tracks. That was not really the rest.
Okay, there have been articles that have misrepresented your band. Because
it's like if they just asked, I could tell them.
Right. Like I specifically read information saying that the new album also has Dark Souls songs, and I guess that's not correct.
It's not.
Oh wow. Wow, there's misinformation on the internet. I'm absolutely shocked.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Who would go online and tell lies?
Well, fortunately, the record's corrected, so that's good. There'll be no more articles of this sort. It's all done and dusted.
Yeah, it'll never happen again.
Well,
it's fine. It's fine.
We did want to ask a little bit about this idea of writing lyrics based on video game themes, which again we apologize, we thought it was a bigger thing. But in general, when you first kind of decided to do this for a few tracks, was there ever any pushback? Like, did anyone say like, no, you can't have like video games as like a metal theme, that's not going to work, or that's not like serious enough? Was there any kind of reaction of that sort, or was it just something that kind of meshed?
I don't recall any pushback, because those lyrics were some of the ones that were written on the spot, because we were writing that album before we got signed, and then when we signed, it was like, oh, we're putting out an album next year, and it was like, oh, we got to finish the album. So we just kind of like hurried up, and I was like, I need words, and I just happened to be putting hundreds of hours into those games, so it was like fresh in my head. And there's a lot of like lore and stuff in those games, and it just kind of tied to themes that I think are fun to scream about. That's basically all it was. But I've seen a lot of bands do the same thing now, and it's like, oh, these are themes that resonate with people, I guess. So it turned out cool.
Yeah, well, that is something that we saw. Like, we were looking up information on your band. We did find that there's actually quite a few bands, at least 5 that we saw, that have taken kind of similar forms of inspiration from Dark Souls and similar kinds of pop culture references. Do you reckon this is like a new thing? It's interesting because metal's origins obviously are filled with bands drawing on fantasy books like those of Tolkien. Do you reckon are we moving away from traditional literature and towards more modern media sources as a source of inspiration in metal writing?
I think so, and I think it's a good thing, because I mean, even back in the late 80s, there were songs about just horror flicks and TV shows. There's songs about Twin Peaks.
Totally.
You can pull song content from anything, and I think it's foolish to try and gatekeep what can and can't be sung about, because you can find themes that you can scream about in almost anything. So who cares? That's how I view it.
Do you think even say I don't know, Kirby or a Hello Kitty based game, could those produce metal songs? Is that possible?
Kirby absolutely could. I mean,
okay.
Those Kirby games, there's a creepy eye creature from past the stars that comes and tries to destroy the world. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I guess. And doesn't Kirby swallow
Yeah, there's a lot of
Like,
devouring.
that's pretty metal.
Oh my God. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
so many songs about just eating and swallowing things and people.
Sorted. Next album.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Swallowed whole.
Yeah.
Do you feel freedom though, like when you're writing these songs to create kind of your own lore? Like because on the track Lithopadic on the new album, there's a mention at the end of something or someone called I'm gonna mispronounce this, but Alazalalel. And we did our best, but we cannot find any reference to this anywhere besides your song. Is there like Beyond Dark Souls lore? Is there Hath lore?
There might be. I made that up. It's an entity that has power over change in human beings. I just chose that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was writing the lyrics and that was the word that came out.
That's interesting. I mean, how do you decide to combine components like that are entirely of your own creation with the inspiration that you've drawn from other sources, whether that be like real world myths, if they can be considered real world in a sense, and things like Dark Souls or other kinds of like fictional content?
I think most of it's coming from playing all of our songs out and seeing how they're received, like how the Souls thing was like taken. It's like I felt no pushback, so I was like, okay, maybe I can just do whatever I want. Like I've just gotten more comfortable. I've always been in like fantasy stuff, and I like when lore is consistent. So I don't know, I guess subconsciously I felt like I had to do it to myself. But in my head, there's 3 or 4 songs on the album that are kind of linked. There's like a flow of story. So it was important to me that I had to like have this entity that had a name, and the tracks had to make sense in order and stuff. I just kind of obsessed over that a bit, and I think me obsessing over it quelled any like fears about it.
Do you find that like fans get into that? Like, do you ever have like people coming up to you asking like, what is Alal Zalal? Like people into
It hasn't
the lore?
happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet.
No. You are the first.
Oh wow.
If it happens, then cool. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, I wanted the songs to mean their own thing up front and then have their own meaning to me, so that there's 2 sides of it. And if that happens, then it means I succeeded. If not, then it's still a song that is cool up front, like on the surface.
It's
That's fine
interesting
too.
that you mentioned that kind of personal meaning, because there's been some discussion, especially traditionally, that like metal singers always take like a step back, like, oh no, this is just entertainment, this is just horror, this is just gore, I just like telling these kind of fun stories, it's all this. But you mentioned that you said it's like some personal stories that you've weaved in here. So have you always kind of had this idea of putting some bit of yourself or something you connect with into your songs? And is there any like risk of doing that, like having people find out, people you've never met, learn deep dark secrets?
I've thought about it, but I haven't written anything that's made me actually worried about it yet, but the thought has crossed my mind. It's always been a thought in the back of my head, but I never knew how to achieve it. It just happened to be when we were tracking this album was when those words were coming out, and I actually felt like there was something to say. Before I was cool just writing other fantasy stuff. Like it's just times change, people change.
Do you find it more comfortable to address those kind of more personal topics like within the framework of like a song that perhaps at first glance just looks like it's exploring those kind of similar like dark themes or fantasy kind of genre stuff? Or
definitely, I think that's it. I think that's a part of it. Yeah.
So when writing these songs inspired by kind of fantasy, is part of this putting yourself in there the reason that you often take the first person perspective? Like on the album of Rot and Ruin, your last one, two ago, all but the 2 tracks use I, and the ones that don't use I do use we and our. And then on the new album, All That Was Promised, only 1 track doesn't use I, and it does use me. Is there a reason you consistently like take this first person rather than like a third person, more descriptive sort of approach?
I've definitely noticed it in hindsight, but I can't really say why. It must be something that just feels natural. Like that's what I want to scream at a show. Like it's like me, I, we, our, us. I don't know. It's just not really something I think about. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, when you say like it's better to scream out at like a show, is it because like does that make it more like engaging if you're using the pronominal forms like I, we, us versus like something that's a bit more removed like he, she, they?
Yeah, I think this may sound corny, but I think there's like power in it. Like it's just somehow I, me, we feels more powerful than they, you.
It's not corny. You're far from the first person in one of these interviews to mention that exact kind of feeling.
So when you do sing of I, like do you ever get the sense that like you are embodying the I? Like do you ever think that because of like your personal connections to some of the songs that you've written, that when you write of I, you're writing of yourself?
Definitely. I mean, on this album, absolutely. On the last one, there was a few songs where it definitely was. In the older songs that are strictly like fantasy or like souls songs, it was mainly like occupying the point of view of someone else to tell a story, because I like songs that like tell a story lyrically and musically, like songs that go on a journey. So I think that's part of it. That's the only explanation that I can think of, but it's just, I don't know, it's just a natural thing.
What about when you use you? Because the second person appears on 7 of your songs, almost equally across your albums. It's 3 and 4. And in some cases, it's like defined in the song. Like in Worlds Within, you is a flame, and in Progeny, it seems to be the protagonist or whoever's voice you're coming out, it's their daughter. But there's lyrics like I let you fall into the abyss from accursed, or I have seen the many ways I hate lay bare before you in the million violations, or your vile adulation on display masking a deviant obsession. You're not but a frightened beast from decollation, where that you is kind of more vague. Are you thinking of a specific person when you use you like that?
In some of those cases, yes. I want to say in Worlds Within and Progeny, those are Souls influenced songs. So they're mostly pulled from like quotes from it. They're talking about particular people in the lore. The other 3 are like me basically addressing specific people that I was thinking about when I wrote the words. And yeah, those are direct. Like in my head, I'm like, this is to that person.
Is it tricky at all when you're singing live to like imagine? Do you have to imagine the audience as that person? Like when you're yelling you at the audience, is that?
I'm trying to think if we played any of those songs to a crowd yet. I don't think we played any of those songs to a crowd yet.
Oh, dang.
But I can imagine when we do, I'm going to point at someone and say you. Because that's fun.
And they'll love it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm the guy from the song.
Yeah.
It'd be like, wait, he hates my guts.
So finally, we should also ask about the song Withered, where you mostly in the third person, so that obviously breaks with the trend we've just discussed. So talking about lumbering giants of more power than man, but then refer to the last of us bound in iron beneath his realm. So why did you switch viewpoints here from them to us, and why did you use the third person here where you don't tend to use it a lot in your other songs?
Oh man, this is about to get nerdy.
Yeah, rad.
Love it.
Yeah. So that one is based on some Souls lore, but based on like a theory that some people online had at the time, where within the game world, there's a race of giants who a king from across the sea, he basically came and took something from them and then basically subjugated them. And I think only a few of them lived, and he basically just locked them underground. And it was basically just like telling the story. And then it was like that bridge with where it turns to us. Mm-hmm. That was basically from a separate perspective. Like that bridge was someone else. That was a giant or several of them like calling out about it. But the rest of the song is like the story of what happened. Okay. That's how I viewed it.
Are there others? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. That bridge was supposed to be sung, so it was going to be very separated in sound too, but the singing just didn't sound right, so we just kept it as screams.
Are there other songs where you switch perspective? We didn't really notice any, but is that something that's only found in the song where you kind of change narrators?
Let me think. Off the top of my head, maybe Progeny does the same thing, and it's in the same lore. Mm-hmm. A curse is the same point of view, but the subject switches multiple times. It's about several people, but it's still from my point of view. I think those might be the only two that I can think of off the top of my head.
We also noticed kind of a switch on how you named your songs between your two albums, because on Of Rot and Ruin, most song titles are one word long, and there's only two, and they're 2 words long. On All That Was Promised, though, you have 4 song names that are 1 word long, and 1 that is 2, and then 4 that are above 3 with Name Them Yet Build No Monument, which I just like to say, a fantastic song name. I love it. Is the longest at 6. Was this a change that you intended? Is there a difference? Was there a conscious difference between how you approach naming your songs across the 2 albums?
Yeah, actually. Hive, our EP from 2015, and Of Rot and Ruin, we consciously kept all the names short. Not because of any goal. We just liked that they were short. But then for this one, we just wanted to do something new because we were afraid if we always did the same thing, we'd be trapped and have to do it all the time. And it's like, no, let's break free of the pattern now so we can do whatever we want. And it helped with naming the songs because sometimes it was like, well, I don't have one word for this song.
Yeah, it's tough to keep coming up with single word names for songs, right?
Yeah, and then it's harder to search. Like, do you know how hard it is to search some bands and songs?
On the flip side, though, do you think there's like a different effect that's created with like a longer song name versus like, a 1 to 2 word song name?
I think it can go both ways. I think sometimes one word is very powerful, and sometimes a very long name evokes like mystique, I guess, or like there's something about it that's just interesting. Like, oh, this song title is really long. This must be special. I don't know if that's just me, but I view song names that way.
Like, is there a critical maximum for that though? Like if we get into like Nile level?
Oh, there has to be. Yeah. Well, they happen to be possibly the best band. So it's cool when they do it. Like they do it to such an extreme that it's cool again. Like I'm like, oh my God, this song title is so long. only they can do it.
Mhm.
I'll accept it.
So there's just a Nile pass.
Yeah,
No one else gets it.
It's just them. It's just
Okay.
them.
Well, you mentioned difficulty searching. So I if this is the reason, that's going to be kind of funny. But we also noticed that the single word song names on your second album are also a lot more difficult than on the first one. Like the first album has song titles like Ritual or Currents. The most complex is Usurpation. But the new album has, and we had to look like all these up. Neither of us knew them. The Kenosis, which is like Christ relinquishing the divine. Lithopadic, which is a calcified fetus, I believe. Losis, turning metal to gold, and decollation, which is a term for beheading, if we got those right.
Yes.
So is the reason you used, was it just like Googling them is now gets you your album? Like, or was there a reason that you chose these extremely obscure, like especially Lithopadic was really hard to find the meaning of, even just, with all the information on the internet?
That one, so basically those songs that you named, when I was trying to piece the themes, I was reading a lot on certain things to help me tie it all into a unified like song. And what I would do is I would read one thing and it would lead me to something else. It would lead me to something else. And eventually I would find these words and I'm like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like it's kind of just tied to things that helped me make sense of the songs in a coherent way. Kenosis, Lithopadic, and Iosis. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I'm saying it like that.
Sure.
Like those are all. I basically used the Jungian approach to alchemy as a process to tie the themes of those songs together, which somehow led me to those words as names. And then decollation. There is lyrical hints in there that kind of point towards John the Baptist and how he was beheaded, and that's a word that I saw used in that context. And I was like, that's just a great word.
Would there be a different effect if you just called the song like beheading or like, chop your goddamn head off or something? Like, would there
I don't think so.
You don't think there'd be a different effect?
Yeah. It would be. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it would have the same effect because this one, it feels like a process, like an orchestrated, almost like ceremony rather than just head cut off.
Yeah.
Is there something metal about like that sense of ritual and ceremony?
Definitely, yeah. It's something very theatrical about it, which once again, I just think is cool.
Yeah.
Dark pageantry.
We could definitely talk about a lot of metal bands in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like a metal band's name, even.
Yeah. So, what about this trend within songs? So generally speaking, the words in your lyrics came off to us as involving large words, but not necessarily words that are obscure as some of the song titles that we've just discussed. But there are lines like cotominious beings of the crucible or oblation to a Bacchic lord that involve words that are a bit tricky at the very least, as you can tell from my own pronunciation. So do these terms have a particular impact that you're looking to generate?
Mostly it comes from I'm trying to find a way to get an idea across in as few words as possible. And sometimes I just find like the right word and I'm like, I have to use this. And I read a lot of like fantasy stuff. So I come across them. I'm like, damn, that's a cool word. What's that mean? And then I look it up. And I'm like, that's perfect for this lyric. And I don't know. It's kind of just happenstance mostly.
Do you ever use a thesaurus? We've had debates on the show before about like whether or not it's you're allowed to use a thesaurus when writing lyrics.
Yeah, but it's usually when I need to like condense something,
Okay.
or have it fit. Like sometimes I'll be like, this line is 8 words, but I only have room in the song for 4 words. How can I shorten this? That kind of stuff. Or like, I've got 4 lines here, but I need 6. So like, what can I say that's similar to stretch this out? Like sometimes it's just to help the flow. Or I've used this word 9 times.
Right.
I cannot keep using it.
No, that is 100% something I agree with in my own writing. Like I will literally, even if like the word I'm using is better, I'll change it just to avoid having it appear like the same that many times in the same paragraph.
Yep.
Does it feel like, do you prefer though to like, then like kind of encounter these words in the wild? Like rather than using a thesaurus, would you rather like just come across it in a fantasy book? Does that make it feel more, I don't know, like something you get excited over?
It does, because sometimes the context helps come up with stuff. Like if I'm reading something and I see like some cool phrase, I'm like, fuck, I need something like that. I want to use that. That sounds badass. Like it's just the kind of thing that like, oh man, this thing is like deep in the roots of the earth. I'm like, that sounds awesome. I want to be deep in the roots of the earth. Like it's just like things that are cool.
What about like on the other hand, when you sometimes have lines that are, you know, filled with words that I guess are quite quote unquote simple, to use an imperfect term, like the line, "Don't let it grow, the dead stray from their graves, from worlds within," is entirely 1-syllable words. Are lines like this intentional, or do they just kind of happen? Do they have an effect that the lines with kind of bigger, more difficult words don't?
I think it just kind of happens, but sometimes it's nice to have a very simple thing to chant or scream. I think you can't always try and sound smart. Sometimes it grows old.
Do you ever try and like strike a balance between, you know, relatively simple or at least like more familiar vocabulary and that which you've drawn from like fantasy texts?
It's happened, but I wouldn't say it's a frequent thing. Like there's times where I've been, all right, this line is too much.
Right.
Or this line is too simple and
right.
It needs to be something else. But I wouldn't say it's a common thing.
Okay. Well, we were thinking as well, like regardless of the relative like simplicity or complexity, your lyrics certainly couldn't be mistaken from like everyday English. You know, it's not really like representative of like, you know, how we're speaking now, right? We were wondering, like, do you consciously try to use language in a way that makes your lyrics seem distinct from how we might communicate in like everyday life?
A little bit. My main focus is having it seem like a cohesive story, like from A to B. And a lot of people don't talk like that. or trying to create a scene that you can like visualize. Usually I try to. But I don't think I ever thought about comparing it to everyday speak. I think for some reason there's probably some like hidden reason that I would like it to be elevated slightly higher, but that's probably just something that I just had learned from schooling for 12 years. Like,
yeah,
write a proper essay.
Okay.
right.
This idea that writing has to be distinct from like the day-to-day.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think it does, but I think somehow that's in my subconscious.
Do you think that the storytelling or the atmosphere of the songs would be limited by your use of like really everyday speech?
I think it would. I don't think it should be, but
Mhm.
I think I think it would be just based on what we encounter each day, um, the way we interact with TV and like film and songs and stuff. Some things use our normal everyday speech, and some things don't. And I think it's kind of like cause us to view things in certain ways if they use one or the other.
I mean, one interpretation that I have, and I'm happy for you to totally discredit it, is that in the use of like language that's a little bit removed from the everyday, is there ever like an intent to kind of remove the song from like an everyday context? Like the way I was thinking about this is like, if we look at the line we just talked about, the dead stray from their graves, obviously that's not how we would necessarily reproduce that idea in like everyday speech. I wondered, like, is the desired effect of that to kind of like transport the listener in any way from like the here and now to this more fantasy context?
Definitely. I do think that that's kind of the goal, like trying to like set the scene basically. Yeah, I that's definitely what I think it is most of the time.
Okay, glad I'm on the right track.
Like, I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. So before we move on from talking about like individual vocabulary choices, I just have like one question because we could not find the answer anywhere. In one of your songs, you mentioned a slag mirror. What is a slag mirror?
I made it up. It's
Okay.
so I believe you're talking about lithopadic.
I think so, yeah.
Right. Okay, so that song, basically the story in that follows kenosis, and where those songs came from, I was having a like daydream where basically it was like a hermit in the woods, and something fell from the sky, and I like went to go search it out, and it was like some kind of like I want to say asteroid, but I know that's not the right term. But it's like a rock that is so smooth that you can see yourself in it. Like so I was like, it's slag, but it's a mirror. It's a slag mirror.
Okay. So it's part of that sort of I guess half lore in a way.
Yeah, it's half lore.
Okay, interesting.
Okay,
Are there
interesting.
ones we've missed? Like, are there other things? Are there other words you've just kind of made up like this that tell a story?
If there are any made up words beyond those ones, I can't think of them because those are the two that always come to mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there might be one more.
So I suppose, yeah, talking more about themes, like there's a theme in a number of your songs about domination, I think, as we kind of touched on earlier, or on the inverse, civility, with one person ruling over another. So Lithopadic and Iosis have the line, show me what it means to kneel. And Decollation mentions that your head exists in this space for your use alone. And name them, yet build no monument ends by declaring that I only taste freedom in times of loss. And Kenosis notes that I'm just a wormling unfit to have crept the soil, which I love. Is this just a consequence of the fantasy theming, or is there something that you're exploring through returning to these concepts of, civility, domination?
Well, it depends on the song. So in Name Them, that whole song is about trying to find escapism from basically our everyday lives in ways that are may or may not be healthy, but it's just things we do to escape just the trudging lives that we live. And it's just saying, like, the only times where you may feel free or when you lose something, it's like one less burden, basically. But the rest of that is like, man, I feel crushed by everything. Decollation, that song's mostly about realizing that you're basically being used by someone, like for a purpose, like you're not just like a friend or an ally or something like that. Like you're just a tool, and basically realizing that. Kenosis, Lithopaedic, and Iosis they're all basically songs to the self, and they all go through a pattern, or they go through a journey from a low point to a high point, and it starts low with like I'm just a wormling, like at your lowest. I don't want to change, but you know you have to. And then Lithopaedic, you're confronting that, and it's like that show me line is more about respect and self-respect, or like knowing what you need to do, rather than just trying to fight through it. And then Iosis is like triumphing over it. But we went back to that line one more time, the show me line, to basically just reiterate, like we learned what it meant to kneel to the stronger parts of the self, basically.
You say we went back to the line. Are you collaborating with others while you're writing these? Like, is it a collaborative process with the band?
Well, adding that last line was our drummer's idea, because he records it all. So we were at his studio. I was at his studio. It was him and me, and we were on that last section of Iosis, and the line was something else, but it just didn't work. Like it was just, it was not lining up right. It sounded weird, and we were like, "What can we do here?" And he was like, "What if you went back to an old line from some other track?" And I was like, "What works here?" And then we went back to "Show Me," and that it just worked. It was like, man, this line here makes sense. It fits. It sounds good. Let's roll with it. And we kept it.
Do you find that, like, do your bandmates look at, check, or talk to you about your lyrics at all? Because we've talked to people that say that they don't at all. Or is it a, do you ever get like a great line, I dig it kind of thing?
From time to time, yeah. Usually it's just they joke that it's about Souls games.
So are they the ones that are in the articles?
It's them. No, they don't often just ask like, "Hey, what's this about?" But they're supportive. Thankfully, it's not like, "Whoa, this is weird. Take this out."
Well, another thing that we noted is questions of light and dark. So 7 of your songs contain the words flame or fire, 12 contain the words dark or darkness, and 10 contain the word light. So sometimes these images overlap in a single song. So as in Death Complex, where you sing, we kindle light from the little death, we blind ourselves and wait from beyond, before moving to the line, taken by the dreaming darkness of void of torment, a faceless death. Are you surprised by this number of references to light and dark, or is this something that you're aware of and actively trying to integrate into your writing?
If you recall, I was talking about how sometimes I use a word too much.
Okay.
Those are words where I was like, man, I need to not use this so much, but I can't think of anything else. So that was when we would pull the thesaurus out and not come up with anything else. But like Death Complex, as an example, that song is mostly about like anxiety over sleep and death combined, because I have weird anxieties about both tied together. So making a song about it felt natural. And sleeping, there's light and dark, and with the same thing with living and dying, like light and dark. So like it just came up a bunch of times, and it was like, man, I can't escape it.
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting that you're saying a lot of this. Something that you've repeated a couple of times is like, the connections between the themes in your songs and either your own like fears or anxieties or your own experiences. And this is kind of something that's been mentioned, at least in some of the literature on metal and in our own interviews, that metal can be this space for addressing these kind of issues that we often kind of put in the back of our minds. Is that how you view metal, as a like vehicle to address these kind of anxieties or darker experiences?
I think it can be. I don't think it is by default, but I think absolutely it can be. I think every medium can be used to explore these deeper things. But the genre, I guess it always has been. Like people say, like all these songs about like dying and death, like it's used to explore that. And I'm like, I don't know if it genuinely is or not, but it definitely has been. You know, definitely has been from time to time. I think it's good to do so.
Is there a therapeutic or exploratory aspect at all? Like in writing a song about anxieties over sleep and death, do you feel those anxieties disappear? Not disappear, but weaken at all?
I've definitely felt them lessen in frequency. I don't know if it's related or if just happened to slow down, but I think that it definitely is cathartic in some way. With some things, like there's some of these songs that are about people or relationships with people that no longer bother me as much because now I made the song about it. I'm like, I feel fine now. I'm like, I said my piece, even though it's only for me. I said it.
Does that make it hard to go back to the song at all? Like if you don't have the initial kind of feeling or passion that you had when you put, say, pen to paper?
I understand why other people feel that way about songs that they've made. Like I've heard lots of people say, like, I don't like to sing this song anymore because it makes me think about XYZ. But it hasn't happened for me. Like I think it's more therapeutic, and it's I think since I write the songs in a way that you don't need to know the context, I think that helps.
So like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, like that's all.
So like, even if does the story help in a way? Like even if the original feeling isn't there, you still have a good story to tell, kind of idea.
Yeah, that's generally the approach. Like I try to write them in a way that you don't need to feel the way I feel to like the song.
Right. So you don't necessarily have to get back into that same headspace in order to perform them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So for our final kind of set of questions, we just want to ask you about some things that you don't do. And one is you referenced this a little bit as something that you enjoy listening to but didn't want to do. But we were surprised that like there's a lot of grim darkness and there's a lot of death in your songs, but there's not a lot of like explicit gore. And we thought, especially with the Dark Souls songs, for a game series that's known for splashing "you died" on the screen as you die in a bunch of horrible ways over and over and over again. It was, I guess, a little bit surprising in that way. Is there a reason that you've kind of kept gore pretty minimal in your lyrics?
I don't know. I guess I'm just not drawn to singing about it. I just don't think it feeds into the songs I'm writing. I think the only one that I can think of off the top of my head is Commandment on Hive. And that was written in, I don't know, 2011. I think the words were actually, like, most of the words were stolen from I think it was an ancient Assyrian war essay or something that I've been unable to find since then. Like I've looked for it and I'm like, I can't find this. I'm like, did I imagine this? It's so weird. But like, I think that's the extent of the, I don't know, gore and violence in our songs. I don't know. It's just not something that comes naturally, I guess.
Well, along similar lines, there's also almost zero swearing in your lyrics. I think we just found one use of damn and one use of hell, if you can consider them swearing at all. And their uses are to refer to, a damning sentence, and hell as a location. So, not really even in a swearing sense. So is there a reason that you avoided swear words in your writing?
Honestly, no conscious reason.
Okay.
It's just a weird coincidence.
Okay.
Like, I think once again, it's like through growing up in like school and stuff, I just kind of like have this thing in my head where I'm like, no, you can't write the way that you speak. No, that's evil. And I'm like, it's kind of wrong to think that way, but I can't help it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there seems to be this division in metal between, lyricists that use quite a bit of swearing and then lyricists that use zero swearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because like I love just like dumb, ignorant music, like, and I mean that as a compliment. Like ignorant riffs are like the best. Like I love it, but for some reason when I sit down to like write them, it's not what comes out.
Okay. And another thing that we noticed, the final thing we noticed that's a bit rare, is that there's not a lot of rhyme. We might have missed a few because you use some larger words which are tricky to find the rhymes in, but we found, I think, 8 across the 2 albums, 8 instances of rhyme, 8 rhyming pairs. Is rhyming something that you kind of feel not personally all that interested in as a lyricist?
I don't really care about rhyming. I do listen to a lot of music where rhyming is key. It's probably most of the things that I listen to, but when I'm writing, I mostly just think about the feeling like that comes out of it, and just how it feels to scream the words, how it feels to hear them. I concentrate more on that and the flow of the words than if they rhyme or not. If I focused on the rhyming, oh my God, I would never get done writing. I would never finish. Because like I will obsess over 4 lines for 4 weeks. I'll be like, no, it's not right. I got to change it again.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jess.
I was going to ask the question you're going to ask. Go ahead.
Okay. There were 2 cases where we found rhymes that seemed kind of difficult or complex enough that we thought that maybe you did sit down and kind of bang them out. Specifically, you have the line, "A messenger brought me word of your demise, an escape or condemnation through different eyes. The accusers pointed their fingers, the accursed longing to sympathize," where you have a 3 rhyme. And again, it could into sympathize, which we thought was a bit tricky, from accursed. And then you have hollowing further, losing my mind. Only the heat of flame can restore what's left behind. Another undead led by the serpent, seeker of kings, alive from which to repent, which is the only time that you have like a pair of rhymes and another pair of rhymes directly next to each other. Were these lines something that you actually kind of wanted to work in that rhyme, or did they just happen? And if they were intentional, why did you want rhyme in these spaces?
Those ones were, I guess, intentional. Like those were 2 of the songs that were written on the spot.
Oh wow, okay.
Like I want to say the ones we wrote on the spot were it must have been Currents, Worlds Within, and I think I want to say To Atone and Progeny. Like those 4 were like on the spot, and then Accursed I made changes on the fly. Right. But like when I don't have the time to think about it, rhymes I don't know, I guess are easier. So they made sense at the time, and then I don't know, it just felt natural and it flowed there. That's really all I can guess, because it's not something I generally think about.
Okay.
So to sum up our discussions, what would you say is the ultimate role of language in Hath's music, and I suppose in metal more broadly?
The role of language is generally just to convey messages and feelings. And I think in our music, in the genre as a whole, I think it's just that it's exactly the same. It's important. It's how we connect as people. I mean, that's I can't really think of any other use.
Is
So
it
it's how we relate, and yeah, I don't know.
is it tricky to create connections and relations via ways of language that discuss death and murder and slaughter and misery?
I think so.
Mhm.
Because I mean, there's thousands of bands, right?
Sure.
How often do they connect with lots of people? And
Mhm.
like, there's bands who don't have words, and there's tons of them, and only a few of them really connect with everyone because they find a way without words. But with words, it's easier. That's basically it. Like we naturally react to the sound of a human voice, I think. Like we seek words to connect with. It's just a thing that we do.
Even when that voice is gutturally screaming at you.
Yeah, even if it's screaming like I'm gonna cut your fucking head off. Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, we should also ask as well, where's the best place for listeners to find Hath's music and any of the updates on the band?
Oh man, if people want to find Hath music, they should check out Bandcamp, and they should search for Hath. That's HATHNJ.bandcamp.com. And just remember, Hath, HATH. We're also everywhere else. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube and Twitch. I don't know if I said them. We're literally everywhere. It's
very easy to find
sickening.
then.
Yeah. We have such coverage.
Yeah.
Great. Well, as usual, we'll link the Bandcamp in the episode description. Did you have any upcoming tours or releases that you wanted to mention?
We do have a tour coming up. I don't know when this is dropping.
About 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks? That might be perfect. Okay, so we have a tour from April 20th to May 8th. We're going all across the eastern United States. Sorry, Florida and Louisiana and all the states around there. But like the rest of the eastern US, we're gonna fuck you up.
Awesome. Yeah. Wish we could wish we weren't in Australia. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, look, maybe someday we can come down there. I've got friends out there. Perhaps we could crash with them.
Yeah, no, the new album was incredible, so it'd be amazing to hear it live. Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna end this with I warned Jess I was gonna do this, so I apologize, but I'm literally obligated to do this because I have a child and I have a father, so I'm gonna make a terrible dad joke here and just say that this hath been a really fun interview, and thank you for your time. If anyone's made that joke before, I apologize, but I was excited.
I hear it all the time, but I love that joke.
Awesome. Okay. I'm sad I'm not the first, but I'm also happy that I'm not the only person lame enough to come up with that.
You're like, it's bittersweet.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
thanks for having me. Yeah. It's been great.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Lingua Italica. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you stay tuned for our next episode. Before we leave, we just wanted to acknowledge that this podcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.